Recording in progress.
So can't hear you, Jeff.
Can't hear you and can't hear the music, Jeff. Serious. We wouldn't kid you, would we? Get my mouse up there.
No audio.
How about that?
Hey,
There you
that
go.
sounds good.
Goodness sakes. How about music? Wow, you know why. So, well, let's intro first. Jeff Widgren, your host of the Zoom Test Kitchen, where we meet every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern. And we're here struggling. And I'll explain why, actually. And so hopefully I have a nice stable version of Zoom today. The last week has been a little bit of hell from Zoom on my AMD PC processor. and they released one update that indicated it was a fix for the AMD, but it didn't fix my AMD processor. So it would freeze up my client, and I could see video come and go if I just left it alone, but all the surrounding tools, participants, chat, toolbar, all that were completely unusable. So I got on the phone with them yesterday after the Zoom OSC test kitchen. They sent me a link of a deep clean Zoom uninstaller. And so I ran that first, and then they gave me a link to a rollback. What they consider their most stable version right now is 5.6.7. So they gave me a link to that. So I downloaded that and then installed that after running the deep clean uninstaller. And needless to say, you lose all your settings, every single one of them. And so I thought I had them, but I missed some there. So no one got any preview music. I was just listening to it here in the office as I was coming and going. But needless to say, that's kind of what we're going through. So if anybody has an AMD processor, that's to be expected. I don't know exactly what the problem is. I mean, I know it freezes up, but I don't know that I've met anybody yet that has an AMD processor that has experienced it as a participant or an attendee of a meeting versus being a host. And what's really super mysterious about it is that it affects me, has affected me into the meeting eventually. Yesterday, for instance, a really well-known trigger moment was when I tried to turn on the focus mode. Yeah. But prior to that, it was just an eventuality of it occurring. So I'm not quite sure, but what's I think is really kind of weird and super mysterious is when it goes there, I can't do anything with the interface. I can't see chats update, any of that. But when I end the meeting, I don't end it. I say goodbye and everybody starts leaving. The health of my client comes back. It's just like, what? It's like my Zoom client's going, psych, it just totally screwed up my hosting ability, but then comes back to life after everybody. Not everybody has to be gone. Like I leave my 2 other machines logged in. Yesterday, somebody was left over that he must have walked away from his computer, but he was still connected. So I threw him to the waiting room. But it was, and just when the numbers get smaller, it starts to come back. So not quite sure what that mystery is all about. But I will say, is that in over a year and a half, it's the first time I've ever had a problem with the Zoom client and a release. And it started when I installed 5.7.6, and that's when that began. So 5.7.6 was my beginning point of a problem. 5.7.7 was supposed to have fixed it, but it didn't in my case. And so I'm rolled back to 5.6.7 for stability, cross my fingers. So that's the story. That person you're not going to let in because that is not me. Did you let him in? You'll want to follow them and probably give them the boot. I'm gonna remove them right now. I just gave them the boot. Don't show up to my meeting with my name, by the way, because you won't be welcome back. That's the second time. And it was the same profile icon, the Showtime profile icon as well. But anyways, so now that's the second time I've booted. Well, they actually got in this time, but it didn't cause any issue. But last time we gave them the boot, they showed up with my name again. And that was just too much of a dead giveaway because I advertised the meeting, right? I advertised the meeting ID and the password, and it's posted by my name. And so they kind of figure it's an easy entry point if they come in by my name, but actually it's become a dead giveaway. So anyways, that's about it. What's everybody else got? This is a community. Let's chat. Who's
No,
doing what?
I will just tell you, Jeff, I'm trying to, it seems to always want to force me through the registration process now, for registering for this.
It should, you can often land on the registration page, but if you've registered before, it should, if you hit the meeting ID directly and your Zoom client is logged in with the email address, the Zoom address that you registered with previously, you should be able to get right in.
Okay.
If you follow the link that I put out there, that does link to the registration page, and the convenience factor there potentially is that it pre-populates the fields for you if it recognizes you, and you just have to kind of click OK on that. So you might try just making sure the Zoom client is logged in to that same account, and then just put in the meeting ID.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come in with a second client using Zoom Osc so I could practice while we're chatting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what you just said just clued me into where my gotcha is. So
yeah, so it was just an account that it didn't recognize, right?
correct.
And so what? So Peter, let me get you promoted appropriately. So George, I'm going to work my way up the list here. George, you have an ISO machine in here. Do you need to do anything with OSC or just ISO?
Well, I'm just going to use ISO 2, by the way. That's all.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, you don't need
All
to.
right.
I'm just playing with ISO, using this as a test bed so I can move people around and continue the conversation from yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a little bit of a chat discussion with Andy last night as well, and so we may have. Well, I think the biggest problem was that I mistakenly somehow, I don't know how, how the button was meant, the person raising their hand was meant to be a selection and a selection only. And then we were going to put all the actions behind the ISO button that we selected. But I ended up tucking all the actions under the person's button. And so that in itself caused an error of sequencing, if you will. So I didn't recognize that till later. But anyways, all right. So there doesn't sound like there's anybody who needs co-host for a Zoom OSC client. But if you do, certainly let me know. We have some new faces here. I see Angela Heath. I hope I'm not misspeaking. I don't recognize you today. If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. I was here just one other time, so I'm still new.
Sure.
But I'm Angela Heath, and in terms of Zoom, I use Zoom a lot for my business. I do a number of virtual events for my business, and then I also help a few clients with their virtual events. I actually had a problem yesterday for a client, and I don't know how this actually works, but I would love to just get other people's feedback on this. This is pretty simple. We had a license for 1,000 people. We had like 690 or something registered, and that upgrade didn't go through, and it cut off at 100. Does anybody have, what do you do when something like that happens? We're calling Zoom, we're not getting through. Anybody have any suggestions for, is there a way that you can check to make sure your account has been updated, or is there any backdoor approach to Zoom that we can use if anything like that happens again?
Well, and Angela, I just wanted to break in. It sounds like if there was some sort of like quote unquote upgrade that happened, then what's really important is that you log out of the Zoom client app and log back in after any change to your account happens, because even if the change happens on the Zoom web portal, the Zoom client isn't going to know about it until it goes out and tries to grab all that identity again.
Okay.
So that's,
And it does that when it is starting the meeting. That's the thing. And was it a meeting or a webinar?
It was a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So every time the Zoom client app logs in, it looks to your Zoom profile, for all the information that's included in your Zoom profile, including, your permissions to your license and everything like that, so your capacities and things like that. So, I mean, I always advise people that, if you make changes, even if you make changes, like for instance, to certain settings in your Zoom web portal, it's important to log out of the Zoom client and log back in. So this way, all those changes, there's those different specific changes, you might make changes to, different settings or anything like that. It's got to, the client has to log out and log back in to grab all those different changes you've made.
Okay.
I'll share as well on the on that back-end portal under your profile for the account that's hosting that meeting. If you scroll down under your profile, you'll have this area that gives you the number of participants for your meeting that it currently thinks you're licensed for. So if this doesn't reflect the number that you're expecting, even after being in touch with support, then that would be a key indicator that it's something, even behind the scenes, that they haven't got it connected to the right account possibly.
Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Can I just say a word? Angela,
You bet.
I have actually hit this problem because I had a 500 webinar license and suddenly got over 500 people into that webinar, bought another license, added it on, and I didn't do what Chris just mentioned. I didn't restart the webinar, so that additional 500 never got on.
Okay. That's probably what happened. I'm thinking. That's what happened. But thank you, guys.
You bet.
And didn't mean to steal your thunder, Jeff.
No, I'm not here to have thunder, man. I'm here to bring a lot of minds together that all have had, similar but different experiences. So we can all learn from them. So not a problem at all. Adam Hessler, why don't you remind us who you are, where you're from, what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Adam Hessler. I've been on here just once before, and I am the Chief Experience Officer at a new software tech company called Gamio, and we provide gamification for sponsors to be able to have that interaction with attendees. And so my big question was, I was doing a bit of a collaborative session with people trying out Miro, which is a bit of a collaboration type board using the Zoom apps. And I didn't have very good experience with it. I moved the people as far over as possible, and I still found myself sort of zooming in and out to be able to actually use the Miro board. I was just curious what people have experienced either with collaborative apps or others that you've really liked as opposed to maybe not so much.
Anybody digging into Zoom apps marketplace, finding those apps that are kind of cool and work well? It's kind of it seems to me that it's a new effort by a lot of folks, to get courageous enough to kind of go shopping and then implement them and so forth. So we're going to be focusing on them here in a little bit, not probably so much today because I'm not prepared for it and I need to get prepared for it, but I do have a project on my plate that I have to develop and deliver in like a week or so that requires a section. It's training on Zoom apps and so forth. So that will help warm me up for the Zoom Test Kitchen, a share of what that experience was like and what was learned and so forth. But I think it's kind of fresh for a lot of folks.
Yeah, Adam, I use Miro for trainings. I'm not really sure I'm understanding what happened with your session.
Oh, it was just, so are you familiar with actually using Miro within Zoom itself?
Yes.
As an app? Okay, so basically I opened it with Zoom apps and it allows you to actually shift all of the viewers over to the left-hand side. But it was just based on trying to use the board and have it in sort of at a certain zoomed level that was appropriate. I just found myself having to do an awful lot more moving around as opposed to just sharing my whole screen and having Miro blown up to full screen. That would have
So
been
you're
much
saying
better.
you went through Zoom apps, not
Yes, that's right.
through, okay.
Yeah.
No, I've
Yeah.
never done that. I've just gone straight to Miro through.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was just doing it as an experiment because obviously that's the new thing in Zoom right now.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't understand that. No, I've
No
never
worries.
done that one.
Yeah.
Good
Jeff?
stuff.
I
Yes.
have played with the timer app in because there's a timer app in Zoom where you load the timer and then you have to send a text message to all the people that you want the timer to, all the people that you want to load the timer, and that seems to work, but I can't figure out how to like synchronize it. So when I set my timer, it doesn't go through to everyone. It just comes up as an instance at the person who's using the timer. So when you send it through the chat, it just sends like, here's a timer you can use, but it's not connected with mine. You have to click on it when you start your session and check your own time. So it wasn't really helpful.
Yeah, and so I found an app for Zoom specifically called Timer. And yeah, I'm trying to, the Timer app features a sleek animation, water-like alarm when the time is up. Keep focus. I'm looking to see if they advertise that sync. Timer app can be started within or the Zoom app tabs. Who can install any user with the install permissions. Yeah, not seeing that at a glance. I don't see like them touting about, you know, natural built-in sync, but I think there's going to be some apps that are going to be worth kind of playing around with, right? And seeing, you know, how they work and if they work well and how useful they are. One that's on my list, I'll say is Kahoot, Kahoot! Exclamation point. That one I'm going to be putting into this training program as well. So if you want to check one out, we'll probably include that. Guessing 3 weeks.
I've used Kahoot for. I do a lot of stuff with Boy Scouts, the older youth some of the older youth programs, and the kids really like it. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Something they can do, right?
Yeah. No, and it's super important that, you know, the audience, be it old or young, you know, they have to appreciate it and be easy to use and be relevant, and, you know, it can be a good attention getter, if you will, an engagement gatherer. And that's what these tools are about a lot. Is, you know, we often think about, you know, production and presentation and so forth, but, you know, there's tons, there's business meetings, there's classrooms, and sometimes you just need to break up the monotony. Sometimes you need to gather data specifically and so forth. So lots of different reasons behind them. So anyways, let's who's cutting the show? Can I ask somebody to? Anybody feel like switching the video? Because I can see it's kind of double spotlighted on Angela and Adam right now. We need to either go active speaker or be more active switching it, and that's going to be a little bit much for me to
I could do it.
manage. Who just said that?
Pete.
Pete? All right, Pete. There you go. So I've got, so Ray's on the waiting room and Pete is cutting the show at this point. And we're just looking for, either active speaker mode or you can multi-spotlight if and when appropriate. That's fine.
I am not on the waiting room.
No, but you're not the only Ray today, because I'm not gonna call him Frank again.
All right.
Yeah, we do. We have Ray Harris and Ray Franklin. So I'll go Frank. I actually did it yesterday a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, Frank on the waiting room and Ray attending right now. So
Do not. I'm sorry. I was just doing it for a joke.
Oh, no. That's all good. It actually works. It actually works. He responds. All right. So let's see. Hector Rodriguez. I don't recognize you. I hope it's not an embarrassing statement to say, but if you've been here before with us.
Yep, I've joined into a couple of the sessions in the past. So my day job, I do IT and AV. And I manage a lot of the AV in our company. So Zoom is one of the platforms that we use. So one of the things that I'm worked in the last couple of weeks is trying to test that Zoom events platform. And that's a big thing for us right now, trying to find a platform to put do a lot of our conferences. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so last Friday, I don't know if you tuned in. But,
yep, I was there, and I think I found out good information, and I think hopefully after the next event, Zoom will release something that we think we're going to be able to use. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty confident that they are running on their own version, right, of Zoom events for Zoomtopia to be able to, do what they're doing, which is kind of what we want to be able to do as well in time. And they're proving that out and getting the bugs out and the features added and so forth. So it'll be kind of cool. I will, I'll throw that slide up in my camera right now on the 17th, which is the same week as Zoomtopia. Zoomtopia is on the 13th and 14th. That's Monday, Tuesday. On the 17th, Sam Kakaiko is going to visit the Zoom Test Kitchen. So that's 2 weeks away. And he's the manager of the team behind the production technology of Zoomtopia. And so he's going to come share with us a behind the scenes view, if you will, of what they designed and architected and ultimately used to deliver Zoomtopia, their 2-day conference, to the world. And he'll also open up, Q&A. And last time he visited us a short few months ago, he and his team were super helpful and super generous with their time. I'm not sure, if he will be over his jet lag yet of that whole conference, but he agreed on that day to come visit. So, kind of watch with a different eye. If you have questions that, kind of come to mind, know that Friday you'll be able to come in the kitchen and ask those questions of Sam as well. And he should be very, very informative at that. So anyways, I think we should be good. I see a note, and I advertised today, even though I had a pretty short notice, maybe an hour before the test kitchen scheduled time. I finally got a note out there that said we're going to be here, so come on out. A lot of people have it on their calendars and so forth, but the invite system, the event system in Facebook wasn't working. And so I just did a quick email. Let me just do a poll real quick. I have a fairly hearty email list of kind of everybody who's kind of come to one of the 2 kitchens or whatnot. I mean, did everybody here get that email that talked about the kitchen? I mean, just a quick raise of hands for those who have a camera on. So that's a pretty effective. If you didn't get the email, speak up real quick and let me know what got you here. I mean, was there a notification? I mean, I did a post, just a handwritten post on the Facebook group as well, but how else did you hear about it as well? Adam?
I was just going to say that I always see your posts in Tempo Live Events Slack community.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I see it in office hours Discord.
Yeah, and I didn't do either one of those today, but you're speaking historically, and the link is the same. The meeting number and the link is the same every week intentionally, and the password is the same for both the Zoom OSC test kitchen, not the meeting ID, but the password remains the same between the two, the zKitchen as well. So try to keep things simple. You know, what it really means at the end of the day is we've taken on the burden of keeping our meeting as secure as possible. And in the email today, I talked about that's what we're going to review today. It's been a while since we have, and a note I see in the chat. It was a direct message from Ed Willock. He says the share screen is enabled in the security settings. And the reason he's telling me that, and it is again, actually, whoever keeps turning that on, please don't, is because he knows that part of my practice is to never enable the share screen under the security settings. What happens is, and we'll just kind of let this blend and roll into, and I'm not slapping anybody on the hands, whoever has, you know, it's a short list, whoever has co-host has the ability to potentially do that. And it makes no difference to me. I didn't, just because I gave co-host to somebody doesn't mean I ran through my practice either, you know what I'm saying? So it's not a big deal at all. And I know that everybody practices a little bit differently, but I like to be able to explain the logic, and these are lessons learned, you know, you know, I thought, and I've worked a lot with Ed. I've probably spent the most amount of time with Ed Willock, who's in the meeting off camera, and, you know, kind of going through, you know, security settings, and he's done a ton on recording and shared some of that with me. And we've just kind of hammered things out sometimes in the wee hours of the night to really figure out if that behavior is real or not. And so we've learned a lot together. But there was a day a few months ago that that we got Zoom bombed, and it was not pleasant. I think Ray Harris for sure was here. Ray Franklin was here. There was, you know, it was, if it's not that one porn video is better than three, but you know, it's we got hammered with like 5 people who entered the meeting all at the same time. So it was very coordinated, and they all gave us something inappropriate, whether it was audio and video, and the longer it took for me to, you know, figure out what to do, the worse it got. And so, you know, I mean, I own all that in the sense that I got too relaxed. I got too comfortable with the community, and I'd always start the meeting with the waiting room on, but eventually, especially that day, I got back to my office, sat down at the desk, got all plugged in. I was ready to go. I wasn't going to be leaving again. So I let everybody in, turned the waiting room off, started the meeting, and so forth. So that was the first guard that I let down, which was the gatekeeper, if you will, the waiting room. And it's not that you, while they're in the waiting room, you can figure out a lot, but it's kind of like, you know, merge entry points on freeways, right? You have to wait there until it's your turn. And so when, let's say, Ray Franklin manages the waiting room, one of the things I've asked people with that role to do in the past now is follow them in. And so when you let them in from the waiting room one at a time, go to the bottom of the gallery, because that's where they're going to land, and follow them in, and make sure that when they either don't turn their video on, or if they do turn their video on, it's a friendly face versus some inappropriate video that's already playing or something like that, right? And if it is, just have the right button of the mouse ready to remove them immediately and be ready to go. So it's a bit of a waiting room manager bouncer type position, and that's the benefit of kind of that one at a time. And feel free, chime in. Everybody can unmute. Chris, you have your hands up as well. You have a question here as well?
Well, actually, I kind of wanted to just chat a bit with Hector, because Hector seems to do similar things that what I do. And he had mentioned that Zoom is just one of the platforms that they use at his company. And so I was just wondering, what other platforms are you using? Is it a type of thing where you're sort of bringing in Zoom now for a number, for a particular reason or anything like that? Just kind of wanting to get some sort of insight to your experience as being like an IT AV guy in a more corporate setting. So
just wait for
Hector,
did you
hear any of that?
Comments
No, my apologies. I was getting a phone call. Can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, sure. So I mean, you do a lot of the same things like that I do in regards to IT AV support kind of things. And you had mentioned that Zoom is just one of the platforms that you use in your environment. And so I was wondering, some of the other platforms you use, and like, for instance, why Zoom is now a particular platform. Is there is it because of it's supporting certain conference rooms, or it's I mean, what's the what's the thought behind that?
Well, the other platform that we use is Teams.
Right.
Because we are in Office 365 or Microsoft 365. So that's the better platform for internal purposes. And we use Zoom. We had the two platforms because at the time when we had Teams and we were changing from WebEx over to Zoom, the features were not there, right? Teams had a bunch of features, but they were not the same ones at Zoom. So that's why we decided to do keep both platforms. Basically, Zoom more for external webinars and meetings, and Teams more for internal ones.
So with Teams, I mean, are people doing like sort of one-on-one chats and and collaboration in that regard? I mean, obviously, with the Office 365 integration, there's all sorts of like SharePoint integrations and things like that. So obviously that's why you have Teams. But then with Zoom, I mean, you're saying like, so it's more to support like webinars and larger meetings, things like that. I mean, and is there any particular like conference room integration or things like that you're looking at towards?
We did had some rooms set up with Zoom. We also had some meeting rooms set up with Teams, but because we've been out of the office since the March of last year, we basically had empty rooms in there.
Right.
But we have a combination of both things. We have both appliances integrated from a. Let's say we have one of the boardrooms that have a third-party application that can run both things, both Zoom and Teams, or we have some dedicated rooms that only have Zoom or only have Teams.
Are you using any of the sort of cross-platform, solutions, so that this way,
we have not touched any of the cross platforms. We looked into that, but we haven't been able to find one that works well. I know Crestron on the newer versions of their systems, they'll have a cross-platform. But at the time when we were back in 2019 and we were looking for solutions, we found that the best thing to do was to pick Teams, only Teams or only Zoom.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just, it's not often that I run across somebody who does, similar things that I do. And so that's why I kind of just wanted to get some of your experience about how things work. Obviously, we're not, back to the office or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that has affected how we manage technology. It's difficult to manage technology in a room when there's nobody in the room, right?
Of course.
And
yeah.
so the room's been empty, but hopefully we go back either later in the year or until next year.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back and try to figure out the upgrades that we need to do.
Yeah. Are you like anticipating any kind of sort of like a hybrid initiative, people that will still be working at home and then people who might be in the office? And
there's a large percentage of the company who works remotely, and we have people all around the world. So yes, there's been a lot of people who migrated to work only from home. So right now we have a lot of empty offices that people are not coming back to it. So.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's it. Again, just kind of like wanting to see what's out there. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
And thanks, Jeff.
You bet. All right. I was kind of scrolling back on the chat, and earlier in the meeting, James Redmond mentioned that Zoom has a new update that he was experiencing freezing of some meetings as well. I had already applied that update. That was 5.7.7 that specifically noted the AMD freezing fix, and I still experienced it after applying that update. So a little bit of a surprise that occurred, but hopefully the more tickets that come in, the more they'll pay attention to it and try to get it resolved as well. So I appreciate that feedback. So Tom says he was hoping to access this meeting with Zoom OSC, but it forced him to join in Zoom.us. He says it's letting them in now. So if you have a machine that you need upgraded to co-host and so forth, I'm certainly welcome to do that.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it was weird because I was trying to join through Zoom OSC and I entered in the meeting number and the meeting passcode.
Have to do the email method so that what happens is I require authenticated accounts to be in this meeting. Therefore, with Zoom OSC, you can't just plug in the meeting number and password. You have to give it your email address so that it knows who you are via Zoom to satisfy my requirement, and then you can pop in the meeting information as well. George, what do you have to add to that?
I was going to say, that was the same problem I had about 10 minutes ago. I had forgotten to sign in with my alternate ID into Zoom. Once I did that.
When I was though, I was signed into my Zoom account in Zoom OSC, so that's why I was getting frustrated.
Gotcha. George, you were double muted last time. Let's try again.
Absolutely right. Once I got off office hours, I just muted myself. So it's just best if you use two separate emails. I mean, I'm using my business account, but there's two different. I have my own personal email and then the company email. So you need to use two separate emails to get into these meetings with your ISO. It's just easier.
Yeah. Yeah. When I started using.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom.
So even though I wasn't signed in to, I didn't have Zoom.us loaded up on my computer at the time, or open at the time. I was just signed in through Zoom OSC. I should be using a different email address for any time that I'm using Zoom OSC, even if I'm not using Zoom OS. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, you could do one of two things really. I think I think the suggestion of it's easier to use two separate accounts if you're coming into the meeting yourself on the vanilla Zoom client from Zoom, then use a different Zoom account, even a free one if you want, to use for the OSC machine that's going to join via the OSC client, if you will. Or you yourself can just use the OSC client to join the meeting under your main account, and you don't. It's not a matter of having like Zoom.us up in a web browser. It's not that. You just have to put in the email address, the email method on that Zoom OSC client versus direct to the meeting. And it is my fault, but it's also part of this conversation on security. so we require you to at least be known. I require attendees of this meeting to at least be known and authenticated by Zoom, the corporation. And that's that one checkbox when you create a meeting, right? And so I'm glad you got through that. And to everybody, if you if you join this meeting or yesterday's Zoom OSC meeting on Thursday afternoons at 3, kind of a lot of the point of it is, discussion, but it's also really meant to encourage it to be a workshop as well. And so, if you want to play with Zoom OSC, or if you want to play with Zoom ISO, certainly, tee up your hardware assets accordingly, get them set up before you, come in, and then have them join. And Zoom ISO, if all you want to do is play with Zoom ISO, you don't have to request co-host permissions. But if you want to do anything via Zoom OSC, then you do need to request that. And I'm happy to offer that in the meeting, during the meeting, as long as things don't go too awry. I don't mind a few things going kind of silly here and there, but that's what a workshop is, all about, is kind of failing together and failing forward and the whole bit. Hey, Robert, what you got?
Sorry, someone was finishing something off.
Peter was gonna interject.
I was gonna say,
go ahead, Peter, and then Robert.
There's a subtlety in that. What you just said is, I can use Zoom OSC commands to control from my Stream Deck to my Zoom OSC client, and you don't know what I'm doing. I'm just watching it play. I'm letting it move things how I'm seeing things.
Yep.
Knowing that I can then test it in the future when I am the host on that, it will behave the way the Stream Deck will behave the way I expect it to behave.
Yeah.
So
only
if you really want to control what you're doing through Zoom OSC, then you need to grant people co-host.
Yeah. If you want to spotlight versus while you're practicing, you can just make them pens instead, and really essentially have, same type of results. You'll have to change your code slightly, when you go to production, but the logic behind it is, can be the same. But yeah, there's things, if you want to play with things that are all local, that's not a problem at all. But if you want to, share at a button press, you want to spotlight at a button press in the meeting, that's when you need co-host and kind of permission in general, so that it's not too interruptive. Sometimes we go into just workshop mode. It's not broadcast mode anymore. And so quiet time is perfectly fine, challenges of, pop-ups or too many pop-ups or whatever, like it's just a workshop. And I don't at that point, care so much about, a quality of a broadcast or anything like that. So I think a lot of folks, so we're streaming, for those that don't know, we stream this meeting to our our Facebook page and group, but then for the archives, we also stream it to our YouTube channel, and so we have a playlist there for the Zoom Test Kitchen. We have a playlist there for the Zoom OSC Test Kitchen. And then we also link into Andy's playlist of his Zoom OSC training videos and his Zoom ISO training videos. So when he makes changes, they reflect over on our site as well. But yeah, it's a great resource there. If you haven't gone there yet, go there, subscribe. I mean, you can watch the stream. Now I'm not trying to boot you. I'm just saying you can go monitor and see that it's working. I monitored it once. I hope it's still up and going, but we usually have, a few viewers on each platform and either listening in or watching, but I don't, in fact, watch the comments there very often. So if anybody finds that there's some comments that need to be attended to, I'm happy to take those too. But in either case, let's roll back to, continuing down the kind of security practices. And so we kind of naturally brought one up that when you are scheduling a meeting, let me see if I can find my profile again. Here we go. I'll bring this up and share it. I don't like just talking. I like showing as well. So, so when you're scheduling a meeting and going through these options, and blow that up a little bit, as far as the ones that really do well for security, I would say the first one's registration. A lot of people say, no, I'm really not interested in grabbing their data. If you put that in a security context, you should be really interested in it, because even if you're just asking for, first name and I think it's email, those two are hard required. You can't not ask for them. Zoom forces those, but you can add other data fields. The sheer ask of please provide some basic to more advanced data, you're gathering more trusted users, if you will, right? People who know, what your meeting is about, and they've been invited and all that jazz. So I think that is a great start. The result is you do in fact get some useful data. I mean, it paid off great today. I don't actually use the registration data very often, but today I did, in the sense that I ran a report. And so if I go, this is an enterprise account, so it's in a slightly different place. But if I go, you have reports also. Go to reports regarding meetings, and when you bring up reports and meetings, I'm not going to sit on the screen very long because there's other data there that I isn't mine, and I don't want to show all that. But with that, you can run reports of meetings, and you can get the registration data, and then I just output that, open it up in Excel, and then I take it down to just the email field itself. In Excel, I then I just quickly sort it from A to Z. Sometimes that brings out those garbage emails that are a@a.com and so forth. And so I can quickly see, identify, and remove those. Then there's a built-in function under the data tab to remove duplicates. And so I just tell it on the email field only, remove the duplicates. And then it takes those out. And then I just copy all those emails, bring them into just a text file for safekeeping. That probably would work from Excel's copy to the clipboard out, but I pasted into Notepad real quick for just the clean flat text, no hidden characters, so that I can then paste it into Gmail on the blind carbon copy field for a mailing. So it can come in pretty handy there, just for some quick, easy communications as well. The next one is it's super rare that I'll ever use my personal meeting ID number. It happens to be one of my antique phone numbers way back when. It doesn't ring a single device these days, but it's easy for me to remember if I ever have to throw one out to somebody. But then the security passcode. This is like for the Zoom test kitchen, this is where I can hand type. They initially show you numbers, and so a lot of people think that can just be numbers. That can be a friendly phrase. If you're a church and you want to type in the word Jesus, that's fine. You can use whatever you want, whether it be complex or not. Just type in a passcode of your choice, but don't uncheck the box. Make sure you've got a passcode of some sort. The waiting room is, in my world, an absolute must.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask you a question? Security
Sure.
question about the waiting room. So
Yep.
when you're dealing, I understand, like if you have a small meeting, but when you have one of those mega sized meetings, you can't let people in one at a time. So there are a couple of things that I do, and I was just curious, what else would you recommend? We'll send a message to the waiting room if someone's coming in on a phone, and say, please change it and put your name in there. If sometimes we have people say, oh, this looks weird, I don't really know what that means. What do you do with the waiting room function if you've got a very large meeting? You can't do it one at a time.
Well, yeah. So you can have multiple people manage your waiting room. And so they can each do it one at a time. There is that. You can have a different approach, and you can have multiple people manage your waiting room. One is letting chunks of people through at a time, where the other ones are always sitting on the last page of the gallery as they continue to build pages, watching them drop in. So they're your watchdogs, if you will. The other thing, the big switch is, I've done meetings that have, a few thousand people in them, and you're right, but they're not meetings, they're webinars. And that's a whole switch, because webinars by default don't allow cameras, and they don't allow mics of the attendees, right? Here in a meeting, you're a participant. In a webinar, you're an attendee. Well, attendees don't have mics and cameras. And so that's where Zoom bombing comes from, right? And so you can let them all into the theater just fine, but if you're going to let them into the meeting, then they need to be watched closely. So if they're a panelist coming in, but then there's no waiting rooms. In webinar, there's no waiting rooms. Webinar is a practice mode that you sit and run all the panelists and speakers and so forth through, and then you say, okay, we're going to go live here. We're going to open the doors, and you start the webinar, and then everybody is let in and so forth. So there often can be or identified that opportunity to switch from a large meeting to actually a webinar, which is primarily a deliverable. And then maybe you manage promoting an attendee to a panelist and or demoting a panelist back to an attendee. Maybe you do that as well. But there's some certain gray area combinations of the ways to manage that. It's like, how do you keep everybody's cameras off in a large meeting? How do you force them to be off when in fact you've got a lot of folks and so forth? And so under the security icon, let me bounce the share back up, but on my other screen, I should have done dual screen, man. It's kicking me right now. But anyways, this is my second desktop. So under the security icon, you allow participants in the meeting to share the screen, yes or no. Right now it's a no. Allow them to chat, yes. Allow them to rename themselves, yes. Unmute themselves, yes or no.
Hey Jeff, we're not seeing your Zoom screen because you're not allowing the share of your Zoom screen. You know about that. Or,
Well, I should be able to share just fine because I'm host or co-host even when the sharing's disabled.
Yeah,
Well,
Jeff, you might not have your the checkbox in the share settings within the settings to
in the
show
app.
your Zoom windows while
It
sharing.
actually shows Zoom. Zoom.
You're probably
itself is
right.
excluded.
We're finding, because I did that deep clean uninstall. You're
Right.
probably absolutely right on that, in the sense that I missed that particular setting, which has always up to this point been there and present.
It's in share screen.
It's in share.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. Show individuals. You're there. Scale.
Show my Zoom window.
my Zoom windows. Yeah.
That,
And
Yeah,
we'll go
I-
there.
I
I
was
don't
gonna say,
think
Jeff, while
on
you were there-
Windows. Probably not going to be. Go ahead, Ed. I'm listening.
I was just say while you're there, you're probably also going to want to adjust the setting to not go full size, to maintain the aspect ratio when someone else
Yeah.
shares, so that
Yeah.
and size, so it doesn't take over everything.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that drives me nuts.
I do. I know I had all these things set before, but I told everybody at the beginning of the meeting that they sent me a deep clean uninstaller because I had those freezing issues again, even after I updated. So now you can see my gallery and the toolbar and so forth. So under this, the deal is start video. If I uncheck that, the question is will it disable everybody's video? Quick answer, that's not rhetorical. Ed saying no, it won't. Anybody else? All right. So now no one can start their video, but those that are started can. Okay.
Well, they're already started. It just didn't shut them off.
Correct. Yeah. Everybody who's already started and running, it didn't cut them off. And I'll do the same thing with mute and unmute. I'm going to, Ed, why don't you get teed up to share something? And I'm going to enable the sharing. Go ahead and share when you want to. I'm going to stop mine.
It's almost not fair to have me do it because I am
Oh, you're also a co-host, aren't you?
yeah, I'm a co-host, but I'm also alternate host, so I have different permissions.
So who else can share right now? Anybody ready to just share something?
I can share
Okay.
something.
Peter, go ahead.
Yeah,
I've enabled sharing under the security tab, and Peter's going to go ahead and share. But keep in mind, while he's doing that, I've enabled sharing for who? All participants. So if somebody's faster than Peter, you're going to be the one sharing. Peter won't be, right? And so now Peter's sharing. I say, okay, well, I don't want to keep allowing everybody to be able to share. I'm going to disable that, and Peter's share dies. Your video camera didn't die when I disabled start video, nor would your microphones have turned off when I told it not to allow unmuting. But the share screen, in fact, does kill active shares that are on screen at the time. And it's super important to know that I mean, what the kitchen's all about is learning behaviors, and that one in particular is a behavior that's really important to understand. So
Is that a behavior that is unique to participants as opposed to co-hosts?
Co-hosts are exceptions to all these items here.
Well, that's why I was asking.
If you're a host or co-host, you can share when it's disabled. You can unmute when it's disabled, and so forth. So yeah, it trumps them all for sure. It's a great point. Angela was talking about, the whole reason I'm here is Angela was talking about big meeting management, and the point is if my practice would be this: And it was like, you can't just let, waiting room on. So it's like, okay, if I have to, because of the sheer size of the meeting, if I have to let everybody in, or when I let everybody in, it's done by shutting off the waiting room and everybody just flows in. What's my next layer of kind of fear or nervousness? And that is Zoom bombs are commonly audio and video distractions. And so as long as I can get all the speakers, all the contributors to the meeting in early, get them tech checked, do not have them unmuted, do not have them video muted either, have them ready to go, then shut these options off, unmute or uncheck the unmute, uncheck the start video. It won't affect everybody who's in the ready state, but now you open the doors to the few thousand people that are coming in, they won't be able to, in your invitation, you say no video, no audio when they arrive, but then in your security settings, you also disable the ability to turn it on when you get there as well. So now everybody who's there is ready and it won't stop them. Now, if a speaker gets disconnected and has to reconnect, if a speaker turns off their video, they won't be able to turn it back on. And so that would be the next layer. It's like, so what do I do then? Well, temporarily send them a direct chat, make them a quick co-host, let them get it turned back on, remove the co-host, and it will stay on again. I mean, just kind of know what your tools are, know what your actions are to be able to cure it and not negatively affect the production or the meeting and so forth. Any other thoughts around that, Ed or others? Robert? Yeah, go. Who was that?
Pete.
Pete?
The other Pete. So you mentioned disconnecting. So if person A is sharing and they get disconnected, is the share drops also, correct?
Sure. Yeah, because they've disconnected, the Zoom client has left the meeting, right? Okay. So yeah, their shares and all that will go away.
I was going to say, not for the incredibly large meetings, so that you're 1,000 clients, but I've done a couple of hundred at a crack. And what I do there, and maybe it's just the nature because of it's volunteer organizations, and we've got kids and adults organized into crews with known people who know the members of their crew, is I make the crew leaders co-hosts for the startup period of the meeting. And they are responsible for letting their people in. They keep the participant list up and they look for their people to let them in.
Yeah,
that way,
not just anybody, but only the ones they recognize on their team, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Exactly. That
is good. Yeah, you could split it up like that. Yeah, as far as you have known groups and group leaders. You could split it up within the alphabet. You work the A through L's, I'll work the M through Z's, things like that. Yeah, you could definitely break things up that way. Robert, you've had your hand up. Oh, you can't unmute. It works. There you go.
Thank you. Can you just try one thing, Jeff? If you go to the options on share screen that are next to the green button, the share screen button, and you say allow participants to start a share.
Correct.
Yeah. If you allow it and I share something now, and then you switch that off, you probably see that what happened previously won't happen. I won't get thrown off.
I think it will.
Let's try it, please.
I think it will. I'm going to change it from all participants to only host now. And it killed your share. Yeah, because if you have that window up, here's your point. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pop up that window. But while that's popped up, I'm going to turn that on and you'll see that those radio buttons react to that menu option of share screen on or off, and they're completely tied to one another. Yeah. So that it's, I mean, it is, I mean, those are you got to try it to see if it creates an exception or not. It does bring up another point of conversation is, are you in a really, when you allow people to share screen, how bad of a spot are you in? And when are you in that bad spot? If I chose to allow participants to share and I say, okay, go ahead and share, that's the moment of the most danger because anybody in the meeting can share because nobody is sharing right now. So it's a first to get it done is the first one who succeeds, because who can start a share when someone else is sharing then kicks in and it says it's only the host. And so no one else is going to trump the active sharer except the host, unless you were crazy enough to say all participants on both options. And that's nuts, because then you're going to have people trumping and stomping on top of each other, the entire time. But, so it's the moment you turn it on to enable Ray Franklin. Go ahead, Ray, share. That moment while we're waiting for Ray to share is the dangerous moment. Once Ray is sharing, then the others, the only other one who could jump in at that point is myself. And I will say almost always when Zoom refers to the host, they are assuming co-host as well. So and that is exactly what they mean here too. It says only host. Well, that's not really true. It's host and co-host in your meeting. And so I say that, I'm going to go ahead and disable that, Ray. I say that in the sense that, I mean, I think a lot of us have been in the position of having too many co-hosts in our meetings, right? And then all of a sudden, something happens, and you don't know who the heck did it. And so I mean, certainly you're not going to start a dialogue about it. You don't want to slap people's hands who are usually co-hosts because they're helping you. People make mistakes and or even have accidents. I've done it. And so, it's good to keep the number of co-hosts to really an absolute minimum required to run a good meeting. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the advice that I usually give people, kind of going back to what Angela was saying is that, once meetings get sort of above, like Zoom meetings, that is, once they get sort of like above like 12 people, they can kind of get unruly with like, dogs barking and, all sorts of other, sounds in the background, things like that. Dishes clanking if people are eating or something, but so, all the advice that you gave in regards to, limiting, people being able to start their audio, start the video, things like that are ways in order to kind of modify Zoom meeting to be sort of webinar-like. But the whole concept or difference between Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar is that Zoom meeting assumes that there's going to be a sort of a collaboration or in a collaborative environment, in that, everybody will be able and available to, participate in the meeting, whereas a Zoom webinar is basically supposed to be a presentation interface and setting where it's basically like having a virtual meeting in front of people, but or a virtual seminar, which is what webinar comes from. So the Zoom meeting interface really, I mean, that's the bottom line of it, is that it's supposed to be about the collaborative experience. And so if you still want to have that collaboration, but you need to kind of, clamp things down just for, sanity purposes, then, all those things are a good idea. And, and you can have, I know people that are using Zoom meetings up to 1,000 participants, and, which I think is pretty nuts, but, but they do it. And, but yeah, so I always just kind of give them that advice that, hey, it's gonna take some wrangling to make sure that your Zoom meeting doesn't go off the rails.
Yeah, and I would say that one of the things that I've learned to do is, frankly, technology is my friend in this case, because I have run into the problem that you talked about, Jeff, having too many co-hosts, and you wonder where something went off the rails. And frankly, I've discovered that an ATEM Mini is my friend in that case, because I can share using the ATEM Mini, piping in as the webcam, and I don't have to let anybody else share, right? Because it's just the webcam, and I just spotlight that.
You're just changing my camera from video to something else, right?
Exactly. And that has gotten me out of, let's say, I've had some bad experiences, not quite Zoom bombing, but I've had some, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, and it lends itself to like show protocol to a degree. Like if you know that the presenters are going to be including, graphics or slide decks and so forth, protocol would be deliver them to me, who's going to be the host of the show, and so I own the decks. May I give you internetclicker.com so that you can advance them on your mobile device forward and backwards, but it's just remotely, changing the slide deck, on my end, but I get to do it. So one, I'll be the only one who can share, or I don't do it via share. I do it via my virtual camera, and I just cut to it, right, and change. And
that's
the output.
You just described what I do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Clicker and switch on my virtual camera.
That's right. And so, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of things to consider, from hardware switchers to a vision switcher, OBS, vMix. There's many others. As a matter of fact, I got asked, I didn't reply, but I think in the next week or two, I think 2 is for Sam at Zoom, but in the next week or so, we're going to have a guest come in, Gary, the CEO of Cinemaker, come in as well and do a demo, not just of the product, but I'm not going to say anything more other than a new release with some features that I will just simply say kick ass, and you will truly be amazed at what this tool does. So I'll get that out here shortly as soon as I solidify the date, which is actually coming upon us. Yeah, it's part of its practice protocol, part of its tools. I'll say this. I've been challenged by, be it production companies and or clients of my own, to make webinar more like meetings and to make meetings more like webinar, right? And it's not usually the entire time of the meeting or the webinar. It's because they change from a presentation mode for the first, let's say 30, 40 minutes. And then like I did this one party for a Jewish group that it was all about presentation, pre-record actually. And so I played the pre-record, but they said after that, and they had several hundred people in the meeting. After that, they wanted to literally invite everybody to turn on their cameras and not to all turn on their mics right away, but feel free to unmute if you have something to add. And so, because it was more about, it was a gala time at that point of, drinks and chat and celebration and it was fundraising as well and so forth. And so it went from kind of this webinar mode to party mode. And I've done that as well with other groups where, all of a sudden now the DJ's turned on and we're pumping in the music and we want to see people dancing and so forth. And so it's usually when they're kind of multi-mode meetings or webinars. And then it gets tricky. Then I'm telling you, you better find a really, really, really experienced Zoom operator who can successfully, to the best of the tool's ability, turn a meeting into a webinar, which is not just a switch. It's a whole practice of switches, and then send them back. And one is the knowledge of what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how quickly. And the only solution to quick, in my mind, is Zoom Osc. So somebody who uses the right tools to do the job, as well as knowing what switches have to be managed when. So those are, my suggestions. Just, it's one of those things. Just every event has kind of an event, meeting, deliverable. Angela, you've had your hand up for a while here. If you wanted to chime in.
Okay, I can unmute. I turned my camera back on. Yeah, I was just, gonna just ask for clarification on something like the going back and forth between the two. To me, when you get that large, I just feel like, if it's really just information going one way, just use a webinar. But everybody likes the Tony Robbins effect. So if they've got multiple monitors, they want their photo taken with, hundreds of people who showed up at their event. And that's why even a lot of times when they're not seriously collaborating or doing breakout rooms, they're not doing anything where they're using, because some of them, like this client the other night, nobody could speak. They had everything turned off. So, but they wanted the video on so that they could have their photographer take the photos and it could, look like a Tony Robbins kind of event. But one of the things you mentioned that I had not heard of, and I was wondering if you could tell me how it works or if it works for every speaker, and that's the internet clicker. Yep. So any speaker can use internet clicker and forward their presentation, or how does that work?
So what happens is the process would be, Angela, please send me, via Google Drive or email or whatever the transport method is, your slide deck. I download that slide deck and I put it on, let's say, the Mac that's sitting next to me. And that Mac is going to play that presentation. And in my case, it feeds it into vMix. And then let's say this is the feed. I change to the slides. I change back to me. I may not ever be on camera, by the way, but it gives me the ability to give it a feed. It could be that it has an outside monitor going into a capture card directly into Zoom too. And I could just change cameras as well. So I kind of, there are multiple ways to do that, but I own the deck here as the Zoom moderator. And then what I do is I say, hey, turn your cell phone on and go to internetclicker.com. When you go there, you're just going to get to a page that says enter code, and I'll give you that code. You type that code in, you end up on mostly a page that's a big green button to move your slides forward and a big red button to move them back. And so your button pressing on your cell phone or tablet or browser is actually advancing the slide deck on my computer, and I'm feeding those images into the whole meeting or webinar. But you have the control of speed. You don't have the need to have that kind of what I call unprofessional, hey, next slide please, next slide please, and so you avoid that as well. And so it's just really well managed, and it's so much less burden on you, in the sense of when it's actually time to start it, you don't have to be, as the speaker, you don't have to be burdened with sharing. Is it showing the world your presentation presenter slide or the presentation slide, right, with the notes and stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just go into presentation mode. We ensure on a technical platform that it's successful, and you just use your fingers and click forward, click back as you speak about them. So it works. I think it's a fabulous result. There's other ways to attack. There's another program called like Remote Pickle and so forth, but Internet Clicker seems to be a favorite. So, small and reasonable subscription. But, like when people hire me or they hire Ed or others that are, here in the meeting to be that, Zoom operator, we may, depending on what they wanted and the pricing and so forth, we may provide our 1080 Zoom accounts. So it's high resolution. We may provide, some pre-record playing, using a vision mixer. We will provide that internet clicker features. So there's some real, you're not just buying a person and their skills, you're buying an individual who also has a whole toolbox full of, tools that can be priced into the job to really, really make things, smooth and professional too. So and let alone, I should not disregard, individuals who use Zoom Osc and Zoom ISO. The ability to instantly do like one button pushes. If I shared this screen on my Mac, you can see right here that I have the physical Stream Deck on my desk, but this is a live representation of it. I can do a one button press of Peter and spotlight them all on a button press. You can't do that with a mouse that quick on in Zoom and Zoom only. So, even finding the talent that's using, some of the best tools that are out there as well. They're important. I mean, I actually haven't been asked by anybody, are you using, Zoom OSC or whatnot yet? There's the time's coming though, where one of the quality, a lot of the requirement, this is a tough one. You're going to have to be an expert. You got to have, dual monitors. You got to have two computers, this and that, but they haven't gotten to including using Zoom OSC. And I really think some of the, especially the tougher gigs, should require it of their Zoom ops. Because even when you get applications from people to do jobs that have been described as challenging and tough, you still end up with people who are in over their head the moment they walk into the gig. And so, if you can up the requirements, you end up with, maybe, applicants, but eventually, they'll get to learning the tools and coming to the kitchens. I mean, we teach it for free, it's not all agenda based, but we eventually in discussions and questions and so forth, I think we're teaching the right tools. And how many of you here are using or at least have heard about the benefits of Zoom OSC? Come on, Ed, get your hand up.
I mean, and frankly, I've used, a couple Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO, couple it with either like Memo Live or vMix or an ATEM Extreme. You can do some interesting things to mimic a webinar in a meeting. Because these days you actually can't, you used to be able to get webinars for 100 people or 200 people. Well, they won't even sell you that anymore. Right?
As far as being that large, or
no,
that
in terms of being that small. I mean, all the stuff I do is from a volunteer organization. So it's not, this is all my nickel, not the organization's nickel.
Yeah.
So I can mimic a bunch of stuff using technology, as opposed to, because I can't buy the webinar, that small anymore.
Yeah. Good stuff. Who's up? I've got Sky is in the top left tile with his hand up.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm not sure if I'm jumping in the middle of, is now question time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I'm learning the new etiquette and protocol of social interaction. The question is on Zoom, the product. Anybody here participated in that ticketing concept yet on Zoom?
I've played with it.
Look at all those hands just jumping out of their arms. Well, again, Mad in the Kitchen LLC has licensing for that. We are trying to pursue what is a ticketed Zoom platform. What is a ticketed event? I know other people have done ticketed live virtual events. I'm trying to stay within the Zoom arena because it's physically like you're renting a theater and not asking somebody to go across the street to buy their ticket. They just go to the theater and there's a box office and you just buy your ticket and go on in. That's the theory of what I'm believing on Zoom can be. Now, Jeff, you had Zoom events, the gentleman do the thing what, about a week ago? Yeah, it was a week ago today. Gosh, it was a week ago today. And we learned a lot about what a Zoom event, the advantages of that it's going to be, but Matt in the Kitchen is trying to exercise their use case of on Zoom. So maybe Mr. John would know something about that. Anyway, we're ready to start exercising that tool that you gave us like a year ago. Sorry, John.
No apologies. I just joined, so I'm not sure what the discussion is.
The question is, we're ready to start exercising on Zoom. We now put our big Zoom pants on and we're trying to figure out how to use them.
I think the biggest difference between, Zoom events and on Zoom is a single event, a single artist, a single concept for the most part. Where Zoom events lets you, if you're a company, even if it's internal, you can build all the meetings for the day and everybody can see the meetings, the schedules, the links to join them and so forth. And or sign into the ones they want to sign up for and be a part of, where if you're an event company producing things, has this whole, list of days, events that don't overlap right now, but that ability to have multi-sessions, multi-days is on the near horizon from Zoom with Zoom events as well. And so Zoom events can host a single event easily. It can host multiple events, and Mad in the Kitchen. Mad in the Kitchen could be kind of the event concept, and then you could have 6 different chefs, that are all stacked in there, right?
And we've discussed this, and that's kind of what
you could do that too. So I think
as a studio, if I'm running the metaphor of a Hollywood studio concept, I think that's where MITK Productions will be the production company of these different, Kyle Hammond we're developing the Hour of Happy, which is a Friday evening based pub show with around signature cocktails, music, entertainment, games, as if you were at a pub. So that's a thing that we're hopefully launching in 2 weeks. That's going to be a ticketed event. The first one's free, but then we're trying to figure out this economic sustainability question. So anyway, that's what we're exploring. So anybody would have insights, I'm all ears, turquoise ears.
Cool. Well, thanks, Robert.
It's not really answering your question, but it was going back to what Angela spoke about, having these large meetings and managing them. We do a lot of that with because of breakout rooms, basically, where we have large groups of people that need to go into breakout rooms. And we have another level of complexity in that we do this with interpretation. So we usually put people into breakout rooms according to their language choices. And what we found is that the easiest way to do it is actually not to use the Zoom registration process, which is somewhat limited in its functionality, but to use a third-party system. We use Sendinblue because we're in Europe and it's GDPR approved, so we get all of the privacy issues sorted out very easily with an opt-in solution, so that they get an email and then they have to confirm back from their email, and that sort of closes the area of guys who are going to come in unwanted. And then the other thing we do is we take the database before we import it into Zoom meetings and do a run on it and clean it up before we put it in. And so I know we're talking about thousands, but like Jeff mentioned, there are certain email syntaxes that you can identify, which are the usual culprits that you just throw out. Yeah. And apart from that, when the system we use, Sendinblue, allows you to define the email addresses that you won't accept registrations from. So that's really cool as well. So it really cleans the database before you actually import it into your meeting for the session. And then, of course, once you got all the participants in the meeting, we also have the opportunity to import the breakout room configuration for the meeting through the back end based on the languages that the people speak and put them into separate rooms. So that's the before you get into the meeting sort of part of rubbish in, rubbish out. So you get all of that cleaned up before it goes into all those participants get into the meeting. Just wanted to share that with you.
Are these private events that you're hosting?
We have two types of events. Corporate events, then we will usually ask the company to provide the database which we import into the meeting. With public events, with registration forms, yes, we do have those as well.
Pete?
So the question I had a little while back was, when someone's sharing a screen, I had this incident happen once with a group of people. They weren't tech savvy as we are. Someone accidentally shared a screen. What's the best solution for me as a host or co-host to have them unshare their screen?
So as the host, you have the power to either go under the security tab and kill screen sharing, which will kill the share, or when someone is sharing, you get that is it green or red, guys? I think
it's
green,
both.
right?
I think it's both.
It's the tool. It's
Yeah.
It's not a full tool bar, but it's a small bar, bright color, either red or green, that says who is sharing their screen or app, and you can drop that down. And as a host, you can kill the share there also. I find that the security button is bigger, it's quicker and easier for me to hit and do that. I don't believe, I always like to think, can I recommend Zoom OSC to do it faster at a one button touch? I don't believe that Zoom OSC, the SDK from Zoom, is allowing them to tap into the options of the security shield yet. So I think once Zoom releases that, then Liminal can add that function to where we can just one button press, kill the share, and not kill the whole meeting. I mean, ultimately, if a meeting goes completely haywire, which was a bit of my case when we got Zoom bombed, there are 5 people, I think, that came in and had an appropriate material, and it's very hard to chase them down, especially the bigger the meeting gets. I mean, the bigger the meeting gets, when it's multi-page gallery and so forth, it can become virtually impossible to know really who the offender is, depending on what the offense is, whether it's audible or video and so forth. And so, and then you're scrambling so fast trying to get it done. It's like, well, then keeping track of who did you boot so that you don't let them back in through the waiting room and so forth, becomes kind of, all it does is slow the cure down, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a kind of a panic button, if you will, and that is under the security. There's a suspend participant activities in red at the bottom of the menu, and that will cure anything. It will shut off all videos, all microphones. It'll uncheck all those allow participant options there as well. I just noticed for the first time, while I'm sharing, annotate on shared content becomes an option under there too. I've never seen that before. I'm not saying it's a new feature because I'm actually on an older version for stability. So I've just never popped that up, I guess, while I'm sharing. And so right now, you guys can annotate on my screen. Go ahead and do it. I'm gonna get a little sidetracked here, but this is a really important thing that a lot of people, I think this should be built into every tech check of any speaker who's plans on sharing, and then they need to know about this option. So people are scribbling. There's Chris, if you can read quick enough, James. I don't know who did that one on me. That's Ed. So you can kind of track and see. The reason you can do it is because I'm sharing. Second reason you can do it is because I'm sharing and I didn't remove the annotate on shared content. But this security icon is here because I'm the host, not a regular user. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is because I'm the one sharing, this is not something a host can do for a presenter who is sharing. This is only something that I'm aware of that only the sharer themselves can do. Under the More button, while they're sharing, they can go down to, where is it? Disable annotation for others. And so I really think it's super important to teach people, presenters, I don't even know why Zoom, it's such an important feature because any I'll say, I kind of hate doing this stereotypically, but any kid who's in the room who wants to exercise their boredom is going to annotate all over your shares without an invitation, and adults too. I was hosting a big meeting with like 600 people in it, and this presenter got annotated all over, and I just, all I could do is keep clearing it because I couldn't disable just the annotation. And I failed to let her know up front about this disable annotation while she's sharing. She wanted annotation in certain parts. I mean, some of you may have seen that post I put on the Facebook group of the horizontal lines and the X's and so forth. All of a sudden, it's just drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing it, which was kind of cool. But I needed to have better prepared her to disable annotation until she wanted it, and then disable it when she was finished with it. And so I'm gonna disable the annotation. I can re-enable it, and then there's a place I'm supposed to be able to clear it if I can find that option. Oh goodness sakes, where is the clear?
So you as a person sharing can allow annotation. Now, how does someone?
It's allowed by default. That's the other thing, is it's allowed by default. So under annotate, as me being the sharer, under annotate, I can choose a mouse, select, text, draw, stamp, spotlight, erase, format, undo, redo, clear, and save, but I can't disable it from the annotation tool menu.
So how does someone?
And I was like, I think that's where disable should live, and enable should live, but it's not there. And, you know,
How does someone then be able to annotate like me? How do I do that?
well, you
when
have
when you're
on your toolbar, you have the annotate button, but if I have it disabled, which I do, I have it disabled, you, I don't know, does it take away your button or just the ability to click on the button?
I don't see any annotate button here.
How about anybody else?
I just don't have the option available.
Okay, I'm going to enable it. How about now?
No.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're looking at where it says with that green bar, you are viewing Jeff Widgren's screen. Right next to it is view options, that little drop down.
Okay.
You'll have a few options there. Annotate is now one of them. And Jeff, when you disabled it, that annotate doesn't even show up.
Yeah, hides it. Yeah, so I if I had a request for Zoom, I'd say, hey, Zoom, please put the disable enable on this toolbar for me, the one sharing, and then you know, rather than, you know, you've got this whole toolbar that's dedicated to annotation, but yet the ability to disable it is hidden under this menu under the more option. And
Jeff, I put into the chat the Zoom Help Center, which talks about the ability to control it at the account level, the group level, and the user level.
yeah, but is that that's behind the scenes of the portal though, right? That's not, is that live in the meeting type of
No, this is how you establish it as the account owner.
The defaults, yeah.
And then that will determine what would be available within a meeting.
Yep.
And then you can change some of those within the meeting. I mean, it's always a challenge as to what is the use case they thought they were building for and the use case that happens. But,
yeah. Well, and we, you know, in the producer space, you know, if that's who a lot of us are, you know, we're always stretching the boundaries, right? You know, from that original design. And that's why, you know, I try not to do anything more than identify the behaviors, identify the locations, you know, and get used to it, because
I think pushing the envelope is what we should be doing, and it's great.
Yeah.
I know
Absolutely.
Sky left, but his question and the other people was that, you know, on Zoom versus Zoom events. I think that the thing I like to remember is it's Zoom. So that is the core of all of it. So once you're in an on Zoom event, it's still a Zoom meeting or webinar if you're on Zoom events. And I don't know if you saw the release today, but the first Zoom apps that came out of the $100 million call for apps were announced. And then there's already some 50 apps that are in there. And I think that's the strengths that I see of the integration on Zoom is a slightly different flavor than Zoom events, which is slightly different flavor than Zoom when you've loaded it with a number of Zoom apps. But at the base of it, it is Zoom, which is a tool that people know how to use, good video, good audio, and has fairly good security. Sky, you had your hand. No, Sky, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I think James is next.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you guys what I use for a countdown clock. I'm using a little program called Bling, and I just have it running on a computer. And I have basically taken it out by NDI, and then I can feed it to different computers. And I've used it in one event I was doing where we had breakout rooms, and I put a clock in there like they had whatever 20 minutes in the breakout room. So then I had 6 laptops, one for each breakout room, and then I fed the clock into them. You know, so I'd use a virtual input on those computers to pick up that NDI feed. So that's what I've been using.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a small step in the middle there, which I think you're referring to, but not really saying the name of the product as far as I'm aware of is, so Zoom does not pick up NDI. Zoom picks up webcams. And so there's a utility from NewTek's NDI tools called webcam input, or now they changed the name, I think. But but it will, if you will, on one side, one side will pick up the NDI, the clock that he speaks of, and on the outbound side, it makes it look like a webcam in the computer. And that's actually what Zoom will tune into. So when you're selecting your camera, now that virtual camera that's actually on the other side picking up an NDI feed, the clock, will be selected, and instead of showing my face, it'll show the clock. And as long as that Zoom client joins the breakout room and that's their camera, then the clock is running in the room. Yeah, pretty creative approach for sure.
What was the name of that program again? Clock?
Bling, B-L-I-N-G, clock. And I think that I paid for it. I've been using it for years. Initially, I paid like $20 for it, but I think it's free now. And another thing I use it for almost all my meetings is I'll have that clock running. Most events I do, there's a presenter and he has so much time. And so if he has 60 minutes, I'll start that clock. And so it'll be one of the windows in his screen that he'll see how much time he has left.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm in contact with the host and they might go, oh, we need to take off a minute, or we need to add some time or whatever. And so I'll change the clock on the fly for them. But what happens is our meetings pretty much stay on time, that people know, you know, how much time they have left. So I've been finding it a valuable tool, and almost all my clients really love it.
I don't think anybody believes you, James. Your meetings are on time. No one of our meetings are on time.
No, we keep it on time.
That's good. No, that's good. Thanks for the share. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Sky, you were going to have some follow-up to some of John's comments earlier.
Yeah, and James, in the chat, I also put in, I think this is the website I used once, of counting down to to.com, and it has multiple templates of it's a web-based countdown, and it's just all over the place as far as customizable and fonts, and you can do a lot of things in there. The follow-up was with Mr. John Idelson, that I think as I continue to ponder this whatever this next era is that we're moving into with regards to pay fee-based subscription sustainability model, is you would have an artist, they could do something maybe by themselves, maybe they did it with a band. Well, that means you had to have a bigger venue or a bigger stage. You would have to charge more. Would it be at the door? Would you have to have 3-drink minimum? Would you pay, or would it be in a theater? Now, is it a 30-seat theater, 120-seat theater, a 300-seat theater, a 700-seat theater, a stadium? See, we've gone through this evolution of being entertained, paying for it. I remember paying for seats at a YouTube concert, $300 each, and my wife ended up standing with everybody else in, you know, the arena for the entire time. And it's like, why did I actively want to get seats? Well, because I hadn't been in a mosh pit experience, which they paid $500 to go, you know, stand that close to the, you know, Bono sweating at them. So anyway, I'm exploring this on Zoom as the new theatrical experience. So when he says Zoom is Zoom is Zoom, I'm challenged by that in the concept of a theater is not a theater is not a theater. A space is not a space is not a space. It's, I'm pondering this. What is the person that's paying expecting in the entertainment space? And so I don't have the answers, but that's why Angela's nodding her head. She says, I know, and I'm not telling. Maybe she's pondering too.
Yeah, I think we
I am
all
pondering. I am pondering.
Yeah, we all are trying to figure it out. And,
this is where I'm kind of, I have this bizarre, I mean, what is a kid from Kansas doing hanging out with the Galloping Gourmet? I don't know, but somehow, Graham Kerr, who was at the origin of television, learned stuff because at that time, there was no protocol other than theater. Now, his wife, coming from theater, knew he needed to be entertaining. And he was, quote, according to him, according to his wife, the most boring man on the planet. And now to talk to him, you can't, A, get him to shut up. Maybe that's where I've been afflicted. B, he's entertaining. And he was being judged by his producer, which was also his wife. So that was the, if Jeff, if your wife ever wants to produce you, we might start seeing your outward, entertainment value go up. I'm just saying.
I don't think she figures I have any problem with that. I mean, a year and a half ago, I didn't want to turn my camera on. I can tell you that.
I know that.
But I'm fine with it now. Not that I think any more of myself, but I'm fine with showing my mug. Anyways,
but anyway, the theater expansion and the value that we're bringing. I mean, again, you didn't charge me to be here today. And again, that's that we're flipping this whole economic model for survivor purposes.
So I'm finding our way in and out of, but back to still I haven't forgotten security best practices, and because there's just so many things that one can go wrong. And we're trying to, I mean, what does security in Zoom mean? Security means, more than anything else, minimizing distractions, right? I mean, for the most part, that's really, security in Zoom. And so let's before we get too much further down the road here is under the security button here, you have the ability to simply lock the meeting. Who locks their meetings? Anybody? Robert? Yeah. Takes a certain kind of meeting. It takes what I would call a lockable meeting. Like it can be locked once the moment arrives, right? Everybody's present. There's nobody else expected, nor do we want anybody else unexpected. So you lock the meeting. And then if anybody has the invite, gets the invite, or if it's the kind of meeting that is a very strict start, and if you don't get there on time, you will not be entered in. It's not the waiting room. When you try to go to that meeting, if it's locked, you are not told that meeting is even running, and you're told the door's been locked. And not exactly those words, but close enough to where you kind of messed up if you got there too late. You'll be texting somebody or calling somebody hoping, but you can lock the meeting. So now outside intruders, if they will, or visitors or latecomers, they simply can't get there. So you don't have to worry about anything from the front door, if you will. Enabling the waiting room. I don't have a way to force it on and not allow anybody to shut it off, but I don't shut it off any longer. And so forth. So I have, in 5 minutes, I have a meeting that I have to jump on to, but so I want to run this suspend participant activities and then recover from it, and then hand this over to, I don't know, Ed or Ray. Somebody want to take host, and I have zero issue keeping the meeting open and handing host over. But anybody up for that?
Yeah, I'll probably have to run when you leave too, Jeff. I have somewhere else to get to as well. But
I can do it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to suspend participant activities. it'll lock the meeting. It'll disable, it'll enable the waiting room, which it already is. It'll hide the profile pictures. It'll disable all these options in here as well. And even on me, host, co-host, everybody. And so I'll have to turn my microphone back on so I can talk to you, because all I'm going to see are names on the screen. Not your profile pictures, certainly not your videos. I won't be able to hear you. You won't be able to turn on your mics or video until I go to the security badge and enable that again, and I kind of rebuild the process. So somebody's popping up breakout rooms. Is that you, Ed? Ed?
Looks like him.
He must have, yeah, he moved over. Yeah, he what I'll tell you what he's doing. I know what he's doing is they used to always publish that when you enacted this kill switch, if you will, it would also close down your breakout rooms. It has never done that for us in the exercises, but so I'm sure that's why he's sitting out there wanting to see if it does that or not. So here we go. I'm gonna stop the share. I'm gonna stop the share. Not that I had to, but 3, 2, 1. Suspend. There's a confirmation on my screen. Everybody's video, audio will be turned off. Screen sharing will stop and the meeting will be locked. Do you want to do this? Here we go. Okay, so I've unmuted myself. It muted me, it muted my video like it's done to you. I see names, all names, no videos. And so with that, you're turning videos back on. How in the world are you doing that?
I was able to just click on it here.
Oh, Pete's a co-host.
That's
why.
right. Okay.
Yeah. Pete's a co-host. Ed is a co-host. Jeff OSC, Jeff Woodgren, and Ray. So all of us named co-hosts can turn your video back on. So I will as well. Ed, did it pull you out of the breakout room? Nothing. Now I told them why you did that, and it didn't close the breakout rooms. It didn't pull you out of the breakout room, and so that doesn't happen.
I waited till I figured you had done it, and then I came back, and then I closed the breakout room myself.
So you can now start your video. You can now unmute yourself. You can now rename yourself. You can now chat. I will unlock the meeting. I'll leave the that, and then hide profile pictures. I'll turn that off as well. So we're kind of back up and going. In the middle of all that, hopefully I found the offenders. I removed them. I reported them to Zoom on the removal, and so forth. So talk about that. I have to drop Ray. I'm going to give you host. There's a chance that I will, depending on how long you guys hang, that I will be back and join again. But I'm going to take this call for a meeting and go from there. So chat about the experience. Ed, you can provide more clarity if you stay. But anyways, I'll see you back in a little bit.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you, Jeff.
You bet.
So I'm
Thanks, Jeff.
probably the least experienced in managing the Zoom operation. My job is strictly coaching presenters. Although I'm a television director by trade, I have not been involved in the mechanics of this. So all I can do is keep the door open so you guys can chat with each other for as long as you want. Who's got something that they want to contribute? Go ahead, Robert.
This is more of a question to Ed, if I can.
Sure.
When Jeff switched on, enabled everything, did he just do it through one button and get back to the previous state, or did he have to go and enable each and every item, like the chat, like the video? How did that work?
Yeah, so he would. There's not a single button that just undoes the suspend participant activities. So under the security shield, he would click on that and then enable each of those one at a time.
Okay, thanks.
But at least they're all gathered in the security shield. It used to be that they were all in the participant window, and you had to click on the 3 dots or more, whichever version you're on, and do it that way. But now with that security shield, you pretty much have all of the options right there, so it's easier to get to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One of our regulars, Lois, has just joined us. We haven't seen you for a while, Lois.
Hi.
What have you been up to?
Well, you know, every Friday at 2:30, I play a recording for the exercise class. So unless I jump in here early, I just don't have time. So
we're glad to see you anyway.
We left.
So sorry to interrupt. Before I head out, Jeff actually passed host right to me. So Ray, are you going to take Ray Franklin? You going to take host?
Yeah, I'm good for a little while.
Okay, great. I'm going to make you host then, and then
We can make people
going to.
watch people leave in record form.
You'll start hearing it too, just so don't be. Yeah, you're already co-host, so you've been hearing the dings. But
yes,
that's another option that Jeff didn't mention, which isn't under the security shield. It's actually in the participants window. Under that more section, you have the ability to play a sound when someone leaves or joins. What's not here though is which
Is
can
it
be
just for the co-hosts and the host?
Well, so that's a back end setting. So in the web portal, there's a check, which is silly that it's not here too. There's a checkbox that you have to enable so that only the host or co-hosts hear it. That's why not everyone in this meeting, every time someone leaves or comes and goes, are you guys hearing the ding dong, or there's another kind of swishy sound when people leave. So if you're a host or a co-host, you would hear that. But as a because Jeff enabled it on the back end and then also enabled it here in the meeting. So
does that also ring when someone comes into the waiting room?
Yes, as a waiting
Right,
room,
yeah, that's-
you enter the waiting room, we hear that. That lets me know to divert my attention to go up to the waiting room and let you in.
So every time someone enters, you end up hearing 2 noises. You hear the ding dong that someone's in the waiting room, and then when you let them in, you hear another noise that lets you know they're in. And then when people leave, you hear a noise too. So, but great seeing everybody. I have to run as well.
Thanks, Ed.
Ray, you have control now.
Great. Who's up? They're leaving in droves. I've been thrown out of better joints than this.
It's starting to get late, but
It is late.
Yeah, and my stomach is growling because there was no lunch deposited. But
What time zone are you in, Angela?
I'm on Eastern.
As am I.
And if I don't deposit my regular meals, I have a problem.
Well, we appreciate you participating.
I want to say thank you guys. I'm so happy that I can't even remember who referred me to this group, but this is a great group because you guys really know what you're doing. And I've learned so much just from this one meeting. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks so much.
You've been a great contributor as well. Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There's Ray. There's my alter ego. Hello, Ray.
Hey, I've
What's
been
up?
working and listening in, so I've been kind of trying to catch up on some things here and just listening in to everybody. It's good to be back. It's at the very least listening in it means a lot to me.
Well,
Or
we're
those
very
Facebook
guarded
feeds,
about
good.
what we say.
Yeah, don't talk about me, Ray.
Ray, what are those pipes behind you?
Okay, so in the
Looks like a
whole,
genie
the whole thing of COVID, right? I actually took my office and dismantled it and turned the office into a gymnasium because we turned our 3-car garage into a studio apartment for my daughter. So basically the stuff that was in the garage came into my office. My office got dismantled and put in my bedroom. And so now that things are moving backwards, half of this room has become my office again. So what this is a Smith machine. It is a giant Smith machine. And those are the barbells sticking out.
What's a Smith machine?
Yeah.
It's all kinds of workout and
Exercise. Okay.
yeah, exercise. So I mean, I don't mind y'all seeing it. It's literally this. Gymnasium.
I thought it was a genie lift. I thought it was the tongs of a genie lift.
So I put this up for the meeting that we had last week. Otherwise, I really don't necessarily care if people see the gymnasium in my office. But I was trying to be a little more professional for Jeff last week, and I just haven't gotten him down yet either because it's not like I'm using it. I'm still in physical therapy.
Robert, your meeting last week was what we were talking earlier about letting people in and not letting people in. What went into the decision, which helped me to have the interpreters who were not on a list that I could see have INT with their name? And how does that affect using Zoom OSC? Can anybody help me there?
If I can just give the background to that, I do that with a dot as the first letter, just to group all of the interpreters so that I know where to look for them and where I can find them. It also brings them to the top of the list underneath the hosts, the people who have their mics on or sharing screens. So that's just intentional for ease of finding and monitoring the interpreters, especially if, like we did last week, had 12 of them. I mean, looking at 12 interpreters at the same time, I usually take 2 extra people just to do that, to monitor the channels. So that was the only reason I did it. And we defined them and asked them to come. I let them in one by one because I knew who they were, and then changed their names immediately. Guys, I need to run. Sorry, it's 11 p.m. here.
Yeah, it's late
where I am,
there.
and
Thanks,
I'm
Robert.
done for the day. Thanks very
Where are
much.
He's in
It was
Paris.
good to see you.
I'm in Poland, actually.
In Poland,
wow.
I'm sorry.
Poland,
Right.
so, like it's starting to get cold in the evenings, and so I'm off. See you
Well,
guys. See
thank
you next
you.
week.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ray, you were also asking about how that affects Zoom OSC. It depends on what you're trying to do with your Zoom OSC. If you are creating those lists in advance, obviously you have to go into the text file and change the names so that they match. If you've got it automatically syncing, then you just need to resync with the Zoom OSC.
Because some of them were being corrected as they came in and changed their name, and that whole change name thing has me still confused. Being a PC operator, I can't do the gallery view. So I was just curious about how that affected it.
Gotcha.
This is my first time to be on. My name is Andrew, and I live in Arizona. And
welcome.
over
We're
here
glad,
is
we're glad to have you. What do you do, Andre?
Andrew.
Andrew. I'm sorry, Andrew. What do you do?
What me do for?
In Zoom, what's your Zoom activity?
I like to watch people to do Zoom, and over here in my I live in Arizona, and it's 2 p.m. 2:09 p.m. over here.
And do you go to school? Do you have a job? What
I
do
go
you
to
do?
school.
Where and what level school are you in?
I go to a church school.
Good.
And in 11th grade, I have 2 more years of that school.
And do you in school? Obviously, this last year you've been using a lot of Zoom room learning, I assume.
No, it's in person.
Interesting. Well, from my job as a presentation coach, one of the things I try to tell people to do is try to get to their head as close to the top of the screen as possible, so that you don't look like holding their kitty. And so if you'll tilt your camera down a little bit, we can see the rest of you.
Like that.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, folks, I think all good things must come to an end. And I think this is the end of it. We're very grateful to have Jeff provide us this opportunity. And I'm sure that we'll meet again next Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern is the Zoom OSC. And then this meeting resumes again at 3 o'clock on Friday next week. I wish you all well and have a great
I
weekend.
have a question.
Oh,
Sure.
What is sure, Andrew, what's your question?
I don't know people want me to do this, but can I pray for everybody before you guys leave?
You certainly can, and those that want to stay can stay.
Okay. You ready to pray? Okay. Dear Lord, thank you for this time to get us, Lord. Lord, help us, keep us safe, Lord. This coronavirus is messing people up, Lord. And Lord, one of my friends passed away from this coronavirus. Lord, this coronavirus is hating people so bad, Lord. Help them. Thank you for the Zoom meeting today, Lord. I want to lift this people up right now. You don't know Jesus Christ. Hopefully somebody will know Jesus Christ on the cross to pray for our sins, Lord. Please help us and keep us safe. In Jesus' wonderful name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very
Amen.
much.
Thank
Well, I
you.
can't beat that.
I go to church. I go to Vision Baptist Church.
Well, we're glad you do, and we thank you for coming. We suggest that you try Tuesday nights. Is it Tuesday nights for conversations with our friend? Is that Tuesday nights he's on or Wednesday nights?
Trying to think of who you're speaking of.
Conversations with Tony Mobley.
Oh, Tony Mobley. That's Wednesdays.
Wednesday nights.
And what is this for?
Hey,
On Wednesday?
Andrew, would you like me to give you your, I'm going to give you my email address, and then we can point you in the direction of some other really cool events and people.
Okay.
Okay. And put my email address in the chat.
It's very nice of you, Ray. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We like reaching out to people to improve the community.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me write this down.
Okay. Did you find us through the Facebook?
Yes.
Gotcha. And you can find me on Facebook too.
Okay.
Got it, Andrew?
No, hold on. Sorry, my phone is taking a long time.
All right.
I'm gonna take a picture. It's better.
Okay.
Smile.
That's okay. My phone.
So it's rayharris1@gmail.com.
Okay, I
You
got it.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. God bless you all. Have a good day, guys.
God bless
Thank
you
you,
too.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye.
good weekend. Bye-bye.
You too.
Recording stopped.